What if an ordinary copper coin you have seen countless times holds a history and a value that most people simply overlook? The Lincoln wheat penny is perhaps the most iconic and recognizable piece of United States currency ever produced. For generations, these small copper coins have been saved in glass jars, tucked away in forgotten drawers, and passed down through family estates. Most people view them as simple keepsakes of a bygone era, charming but ultimately worth only a few cents. However, experienced numismatists understand that this assumption could not be further from the truth. The world of wheat pennies is remarkably complex, where the smallest details of preservation, strike quality, mint location, and historical context can transform a seemingly common pocket find into a highly sought-after numismatic treasure. Today, we are undertaking a comprehensive investigation into four specific issues within this legendary series. We will explore the characteristics that separate everyday circulated examples from elite, collector-worthy specimens. As this detailed examination unfolds, you will discover the precise manufacturing standards, the importance of professional grading, the reality of the auction marketplace, and the fascinating history behind each of these distinct copper pieces. By understanding what advanced collectors look for, you will learn to view these everyday coins through an entirely different lens. 1941, Lincoln Wheat Penny. The story of the 1941 Lincoln Wheat Penny is inextricably linked to one of the most pivotal moments in global history. As the United States stood on the brink of entering the Second World War, the nation's economy was rapidly shifting gears to support massive industrial and military preparations. The United States Mint was tasked with keeping the arteries of commerce flowing by producing enough circulating coinage to support a booming wartime workforce. The 1941 penny, struck at the primary Philadelphia Mint without a mint mark, represents the final year before the monumental changes that would temporarily alter the composition of the penny. Soon after, the Mint would experiment with shell-casing bronze in 1942 and eventually the famous zinc-coated steel planchets of 1943. Therefore, the 1941 issue stands as the last purely traditional pre-war copper cent, struck with the classic alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. It maintained the standard specifications of a 3.1 gram weight, a 19.05 millimeter diameter, and a plain edge. The obverse features the enduring portrait of President Abraham Lincoln, designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Lincoln's birth. The reverse proudly displays the two wheat stalks framing the denomination, a design that symbolized national prosperity and agricultural strength. Because the Philadelphia Mint was operating at an extraordinary capacity, production numbers for the 1941 wheat penny were massive. Hundreds of millions of these coins were struck and immediately released into circulation, where they passed through the hands of soldiers, factory workers, and everyday citizens during a defining era of American history. Due to this massive production, the 1941 wheat penny is not considered a rare coin in absolute terms. In lower circulated grades, such as good or very fine, these coins usually exhibit significant wear. Lincoln's hair and cheekbone will appear flattened, and the parallel lines at the top of the wheat stalks on the reverse will have blended together. These well-worn examples remain wonderful historical artifacts, but they generally command only a tiny premium over their face value. The numismatic landscape changes dramatically, however, when condition enters the equation. Finding a 1941 wheat penny that escaped the heavy circulation of the wartime economy is a completely different challenge. Advanced collectors and registry set competitors focus their attention entirely on uncirculated examples, and specifically those that have been preserved perfectly over the past 8 decades. Professional grading services evaluate these uncirculated coins using a rigorous standard that examines the sharpness of the strike, the preservation of the surfaces, the intensity of the original mint luster, and the overall eye appeal. For copper coins, color is an equally critical factor. Grading services assign color designations of brown, red-brown, or full red. A coin that has oxidized and turned a dark chocolate color will receive the brown designation and generally carries the lowest premium. A full red coin, which has miraculously retained the bright, fiery copper brilliance it had the day it left the coin press, is the ultimate prize. When a 1941 wheat penny achieves a lofty grade like Mint State 67 full red, its value escalates significantly. These exceptional survivors often boast blazing, cartwheel luster and virtually flawless surfaces devoid of the carbon spots, fingerprints, and contact marks that plague most copper coins. In the highly competitive collector market, such top-tier authenticated examples can realize prices reaching into the thousands of dollars, demonstrating that preservation and originality always trump raw mintage numbers. Beyond immaculate preservation, the 1941 Philadelphia issue is also heavily scrutinized by variety specialists who search for documented mint errors. The immense pressure placed on the mint during this period led to occasional lapses in quality control, resulting in several recognized double die varieties. A double die occurs when the coin hub imparts a misaligned image onto the working die, causing the final coin to show a doubled image on its lettering or design elements. For the 1941 issue, collectors carefully examine the date, the word liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust" for distinct signs of doubling. It is crucial, however, to distinguish genuine hub doubling from common machine doubling, which is a minor striking anomaly that adds no value to the coin. Authentic, professionally verified double die obverse examples from 1941 can attract substantial attention at auction. But responsible collectors know that verification by a respected third-party grading service is the only way to confirm such a variety. Counterfeits and artificially altered coins do exist, so establishing authenticity through precise measurement of weight, diameter, and professional evaluation is paramount before any significant premium is assigned. The 1941 wheat penny is a testament to an America in transition, and preserving its legacy requires careful handling by the edges, proper archival storage, and an appreciation for the history it represents. 1951, the Lincoln wheat penny. A decade later, the world had fundamentally changed, and the 1951 D. Lincoln wheat penny reflects an entirely new era of American prosperity and challenge. By the early 1950s, the United States had emerged as a dominant global superpower. The post-war economic boom was in full swing, suburban neighborhoods were expanding at unprecedented rates, and consumer spending was reaching record highs. However, the nation was also deeply entrenched in the Korean War, which meant that strategic metals like copper were once again being carefully monitored by the government. Despite these global tensions, the Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark positioned squarely beneath the date on the obverse, was tasked with producing an enormous volume of 1-cent pieces to fuel the robust domestic economy. The 1951 D wheat penny retained the historic Victor David Brenner design and the traditional composition of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin, weighing 3.11 grams. The Denver facility was renowned for its high output, and the 1951 production year was no exception, with hundreds of millions of these coins pouring into bank vaults, cash registers, and the pockets of the American public. Because of this immense mintage, the 1951 D wheat penny is a common date that can still occasionally be found mixed in with old accumulations or inherited coin albums. In circulated condition, these coins tell a story of everyday commerce in the 1950s. They bought newspapers, candy, and paid for parking meters. Consequently, most surviving examples show the heavy toll of that circulation. The delicate details of Lincoln's beard and jawline are often worn smooth, and the intricate grains of the wheat ears on the reverse have faded into flat ridges. In these circulated grades, the coins hold immense sentimental and historical value, but they do not possess significant monetary worth. The true numismatic pursuit regarding the 1951 D centers exclusively on finding the needle in the haystack, the perfectly preserved, brilliantly lustrous, completely uncirculated specimen. For the modern collector, the challenge with early 1950s Denver Mint pennies is not finding one, but finding one that was struck with fresh, sharp dies and has survived without environmental damage. During periods of massive production, the Mint often push working dies to their absolute limits to save time and resources. As a die wears down, the coins it produces begin to lose their crisp, sharp details. Many 1951 D pennies exhibit what collectors call a late-stage die strike, where the lettering appears slightly mushy and the portrait lacks its original dimensional pop. Therefore, an experienced numismatist examining a 1951 D penny will first look closely at the sharpness of the strike. A fully struck example, where every strand of Lincoln's hair and every line of the wheat stalks is sharply defined, immediately stands out from the crowd. Surface preservation is the next critical hurdle. Copper is highly reactive to its environment. Exposure to humidity, airborne chemicals, or even the oils from a human fingerprint can cause irreversible spotting, corrosion, or an unattractive dulling of the original color. To reach the upper echelons of the Sheldon grading scale, a 1951 D penny must exhibit undisturbed, blazing full red luster. When a coin meets these stringent criteria and receives a grade of Mint State 67 red from a premier grading organization, it enters a highly exclusive category. Elite collectors building top-tier registry sets will aggressively pursue these flawless survivors, occasionally driving auction prices to spectacular heights that astonish those who view pennies simply as spare change. In addition to condition rarities, the 1951 D issue is highly prized by era collectors due to the prevalence of repunched mint marks. In the early 1950s, the mint mark was still punched into the working die by hand using a steel mallet and a punch tool. If the mint employee struck the punch, evaluated the impression, and decided it was too light or slightly out of position, they would strike it again. If the second strike did not perfectly align with the first, a secondary overlapping mint mark was created on the die. The 1951 D wheat penny boasts several documented repunched mint mark varieties, where a secondary D can be seen slightly protruding from the primary letter. These varieties range from minor microscopic shifts to dramatic, widely separated secondary punches. While common repunched varieties might add only a modest premium, the most dramatic and clearly visible examples can attract strong bidding from specialized variety collectors. As always, true value depends on proper attribution and authentication. A genuine repunched mint mark must perfectly match the known characteristics documented by numismatic researchers. Furthermore, the overall grade and color of the coin dramatically multiply the value of any error. A dramatic variety on a circulated brown coin is interesting, but that same variety on a mint state red gem becomes a prized centerpiece for a serious collection. The 1951 D reminds us that mass production does not eliminate rarity. It simply forces collectors to look much closer to find perfection. 1952 D Lincoln wheat penny. The following year, the United States Mint continued its relentless pace. In the 1952 D Lincoln wheat penny was born into a country that was experiencing profound technological and cultural shifts. Television was becoming a staple in American living rooms, the highway system was expanding, and the economy was surging forward. To meet the endless demand for small transactions in this thriving consumer culture, the Denver Mint produced an astronomical number of 1-cent coins. Just like its predecessor, the 1952 D carried the D mint mark beneath the date, signaling its origin in the Rocky Mountain state. It maintained the traditional 3.11-gram weight, 19.05 millimeter diameter, and the classic 95% copper composition. Because production numbers were so incredibly high, the 1952 D is one of the most readily available wheat pennies in the entire series. Anyone who has ever searched through a canvas bag of old pennies has almost certainly encountered a handful of these coins. However, this commonality is exactly what makes the pursuit of a flawless 1952 D so endlessly fascinating for the serious numismatist. When examining a 1952 D wheat penny, the numismatic investigator is acutely aware of the manufacturing realities of that specific year. The Denver Mint was focused on quantity, and this overriding priority often came at the expense of absolute quality. Many of the coins struck in 1952 suffered from weak strikes. The metal did not fully flow into the deepest recesses of the dies, resulting in coins that looked slightly worn even on the exact day they were minted. Furthermore, the quality of the copper planchets themselves was occasionally inconsistent. It is quite common to find 1952 D pennies with original mint luster that are heavily plagued by carbon spots, small black or brown specks that form when impurities in the copper react with the environment. These carbon spots are considered permanent environmental damage by professional grading services and will instantly prevent a coin from achieving a high premium grade. Because of these inherent manufacturing challenges, a 1952 Pennies that manages to combine a razor-sharp, fully detailed strike with pristine, spot-free surfaces and blazing original red color is a true statistical anomaly. When such a coin is submitted to a grading service, it is evaluated meticulously under intense magnification. The graders look for any sign of friction on the highest points of Lincoln's cheek and the tips of the wheat ears. They check the fields, the flat background areas of the coin, for distracting bag marks or abrasions caused when the coins were ejected from the press and dumped into massive metal bins. If a 1952 survives this gauntlet of grading criteria and achieves a grade of mint state 67 red, it transforms from a 1-cent piece of pocket change into a highly liquid numismatic asset. Registry set collectors, who dedicate immense resources to assembling the finest known examples of every date and mint mark, recognize the genuine scarcity of a flawless 1952 auction records reflect this reality, where elite, professionally certified examples command significant financial premiums that bear no relation to the coin's original face value or its massive overall mintage. Beyond the pursuit of perfection, the 1952 is also examined closely for die varieties, particularly repunched mint marks and die cracks. Just as in 1951, the manual punching of the mint mark led to several known varieties where a secondary D is visible. Additionally, because the dies were kept in service for so long, they frequently developed cracks from the immense striking pressure. A die crack appears on the finished coin as a raised, jagged line of copper. While minor die cracks are relatively common and add little value, when severe die breaks, such as a retained cud, where a piece of the die actually breaks away, can be highly collectible. Experienced numismatists also caution against confusing true mint errors with post-mint damage. Many coins have been struck, scratched, or chemically altered outside the mint in ways that mimic errors. This is why professional authentication remains the cornerstone of serious coin collecting. A third-party grading holder not only guarantees the coin's numerical grade and color designation, but also provides an independent, expert verification that any error or variety is authentic and unaltered. The 1952 wheat penny teaches collectors a vital lesson. In a sea of billions of common coins, ultimate value is dictated by the miraculous preservation of a single perfect specimen. 1953, Lincoln wheat penny. As we turn our attention to the 1953 Lincoln wheat penny, we enter the twilight years of the legendary wheat reverse design. The year 1953 marked the end of the Korean War and the beginning of the Eisenhower administration, a period often remembered for its peace and booming prosperity. The Denver Mint continued its staggering output, striking hundreds of millions of pennies to facilitate the daily commerce of a confident, growing nation. The 1953 shares the exact same physical specifications as the earlier issues: a 3.11-gram weight, 95% copper alloy, and the iconic Victor David Brenner artwork. Because it was produced so close to the end of the wheat penny era, which concluded in 1958, massive quantities of 1953 pennies were hoarded by the public in the late 1950s and early 1960s. People recognized that the design was changing to the Lincoln Memorial reverse, and they instinctively began saving rolls and bags of the older wheat design. Consequently, the 1953 is exceptionally common today, not just in circulated condition, but also in uncirculated original bankrolls. However, this abundance of uncirculated rolls creates a fascinating paradox in the modern collector market. While it is easy to find a shiny, uncirculated 1953 for a few dollars, finding one that is structurally flawless and worthy of a registry collection is incredibly difficult. The reason for this lies in the quality control standards at the Denver Mint during that specific year. The 1953 is notorious among advanced collectors for being plagued by poor strike quality and terrible die maintenance. The Mint frequently used heavily polished dies to extend their working life. When a die is over-polished, the fine details of the original design are actually ground away. As a result, many uncirculated 1953 pennies have a very mushy, indistinct appearance, particularly on Lincoln's portrait and the fine lines of his coat. Furthermore, the coins often suffered from extensive bag marks and contact abrasions, before they ever left the mint facility. To the untrained eye, a shiny 1953D pulled from an original roll looks perfect. But to a professional grader utilizing a jeweler's loupe, the myriad of microscopic scratches, weak strike points, and dulling luster relegate the vast majority of these coins to lower uncirculated grades like Mint State 63 or 64. To achieve a true gem grade, such as Mint State 67 Red, a 1953D must defy all the manufacturing odds of its year. It requires an early die state strike, meaning it was produced when the die was brand new, resulting in crisp, high-relief details. It must have avoided the catastrophic contact marks that occurred during bagging and transport. And crucially, it must have been stored in an environment completely free of moisture and contaminants for over 70 years to preserve its radiant, untouched red copper brilliance. When a coin meets these near-impossible standards, its value skyrockets. The finest known authenticated examples of the 1953D are fiercely contested at major auction houses, because registry collectors know that securing a top population specimen for this specific year is one of the greatest challenges in the late-date wheat penny series. These auction results often command thousands of dollars, completely shattering the illusion that all common-date wheat pennies hold limited value. The rigorous examination of the 1953D also includes the hunt for mint errors. Like the preceding years, repunched mint marks are the most frequently encountered varieties. Because the manual mint mark punching process was inherently imprecise, several variations of the D over D exist, ranging from subtle internal doubling to clear offset secondary letters. Error collectors carefully document and attribute these varieties using trusted numismatic references. In addition to repunched mint marks, collectors occasionally discover off-center strikes, where the planchet was not correctly seated in the striking chamber, or broad strikes where the retaining collar failed, allowing the copper to expand beyond its normal diameter. As with all significant coins, the marketplace heavily relies on independent certification to protect buyers from counterfeits and altered pieces. A tamper-evident holder from a respected grading service provides absolute confidence regarding the coin's authenticity, its precise grade, its color designation, and the legitimacy of any error it possesses. The 1953D Lincoln Wheat Penny perfectly encapsulates the philosophy of advanced coin collecting. It proves that history, manufacturing variables, expert grading, and miraculous preservation are the true arbiters of value. It reminds us that every coin, no matter how ubiquitous it may appear at first glance, has its own unique story to tell. Whether discovering an everyday circulated piece that serves as a tangible connection to the America of the 1950s, or beholding a breathtaking, flawless gem that represents the pinnacle of numismatic preservation, the Lincoln Wheat Penny continues to captivate the imagination. It stands as a masterclass in observation, proving that the most extraordinary treasures are often hidden in plain sight, waiting for the collector who is willing to look just a little bit closer.